Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Noah here. Noah, you're one of the people that has been changing the restaurant industry. Early on, you started out with text message ordering in 2005. I mean, years and years ago, before we even have the iPhone, the type of platforms we have today. And you've been, really forward thinking in terms of helping these traditional businesses streamline their processes for ordering and just for also for just digital management for restaurants. And it's helped a lot of businesses get more orders that they wouldn't have had, help businesses stay in business. And now you've been really innovative with payments with the Google search deal that you've had, and a bunch of other avenues. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Ben, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to join you.
Awesome. So, Noah, where did your passion for entrepreneurship, business leadership, and kind of tech begin? Was this something you had when you were young? How did you get interested in creating a business in the restaurant space, in the beginning?
I think early on in my childhood, I had an interest in creating businesses and using creativity to make money. And this was in the earliest days, things like shoveling snow. We were just talking about growing up outside of Boston in the Northeast. There was a lot of snowfall. There was a lot of opportunity because there's a lot of time to go around on snow days from school with friends and shovel people's driveways and make money. So I always had those kind of informal entrepreneurial roots. I worked one of my first jobs as a pizza delivery driver. And if I connect the dots on my journey, I think that's where seeing the restaurant industry and specifically seeing takeout and delivery as this force within the restaurant industry really began. And then I had the great fortune during college, during my freshman summer, I got to work at Shutterfly.com. And that was a really transformative experience for me because it was right in the summer of 2000. It was sort of the peak of the original .com boom, getting to be out in Silicon Valley and feel that energy. And specifically with Shutterfly, to see how this new consumer technology of digital cameras was going to completely reshape an industry of photo printing and how we could take advantage of that and create a new business model out of it. I think, again, connecting the dots backwards really informed later in life, years later, feeling like we were going to have another big consumer technology shift. We were all going to get smartphones. And once we did, how that was going to reshape the way that consumers interacted with local retailers and specifically coffee shops and restaurants. And I think it was those two experiences of being a pizza delivery driver and thinking about the restaurant industry from that perspective, and thinking about what I'd learned at Shutterfly and how new business models could be created out of new shifts in consumer technology and consumer technology becoming ubiquitous, that really together created the seedlings for what became Olo. But my passion for entrepreneurship really started and really was stoked by my experience in working for Endeavor. So Endeavor is what I did right out of college. I got to join Endeavor when it was a very small team, but already supporting entrepreneurs around the world. And I had the great privilege of getting to move to Johannesburg, South Africa, launch our office there, launch our operations there, and ultimately work with 161 different entrepreneurs in a kind of a broad sweep of all of the entrepreneurs who sort of fit our profile, and ultimately 6 companies that we wound up selecting. And they're really seeing high growth entrepreneurs that were just reshaping their very economy. And the kind of inspiration of, I need to go and do this. This is in me from those early snow shoveling days. I have this great idea. I'm going to go for it.
So you had a couple experiences that helped shape your direction. But why did you decide to launch a product before, it was kind of even where maybe it could have hit mass market and scale, like with text message ordering? Like, how did that idea come about and why launch so early?
Yeah, so the idea originally hit me for what has become Olo when I first moved to New York City in 2003. So this is now nearly 21 years ago. And at the time, I came to New York and I had what was cutting edge mobile technology at the time. I had a Palm Pilot. And the Palm Pilot was really not even a mobile web connected device, but it had some of the attributes of a personal computer that was location aware. And I just had this feeling like there is going to be one time in human history when these devices go from being kind of fringe and out there for professionals and early adopters into something that everybody is carrying with them in their everyday life. And I want to plant the flag and be there in the right place when that ubiquity happens. So I went shortly thereafter to this role in Johannesburg, South Africa. I met mobile web developers when I was in South Africa who helped me to build a prototype. And that was a key part of the story, the sweat equity part of the story of building something in a very MVP stage that could demonstrate the ability to build up a coffee order, submit it, and then have it accepted by what was meant to represent a point of sale system. And I showed it to an investor, and the investor said, I will back you if you want to make this your only path forward and quit your job and withdraw from Harvard Business School, where I was heading in that fall, and make this your only path forward. The problem was, back in the US, where I knew we had to launch commercially, we were at the point where only 5% of mobile phone users had smartphones. So the mobile web or the mobile app version of what became Olo wasn't going to work. It was just too small a sliver of the population to make it meaningful. What everybody was using back in 2005 was text messaging. And even so, we still had to kind of give some instructions about here's how to send a text message with the feature phone, with that multi-tap interface of a text message. But it was pretty clever. What we wanted to do was to meet the guest where they were at the time and to show the power of being able to remotely trigger an order so that you could order ahead, pay ahead, and walk into a busy coffee shop and the order be ready and waiting for you when you arrived. And from the operator side, you could receive these orders prepaid, prepare them, and know that you could have that order off to the side for the guest to come in and pick up. And we were able to do that in a clever way, even with the very rudimentary technology that was text messaging at the time. And that put us in the right position when smartphones came around years later and then gained ubiquity years after that for being that mobile ordering platform that restaurants came to know and respect as that platform that they could build with.
So was it early on when you were trying to sell, integrating your software into these businesses, was it a much easier sell because you're like, we're not building a whole new external system for you. We're just going to work in with what you're doing. So that was kind of the direction you went in.
Ironically, it was the other way. So in the early days, we had to give them laptops that sort of ran a program on them similar to that early MVP that I described, where the laptop was running a program that was constantly polling, are there any new orders for me? Are there any new orders for me? Back to our servers. So it was completely separate and auxiliary from their core point of sale platform. So the mobile order would be from the guest through a text message or from the web. They could order from a laptop, or if they did have a mobile web device from that, it would hit Olo. And then that polling application on the laptop would pull that order down and it would get accepted at the restaurant. It was only years later, really 2009, 2010 era, when we started to attract the attention of considerable enterprise brands. In our case, Five Guys Burgers and Fries was one of those early enterprise brands that got really excited about working with us, where they said, hey, it has to be integrated into the point of sale system that we use. That is how we do everything in our restaurant. It can't be this thing off to the side. It needs to be not an appendage, but sort of right in the main artery of the business. And so then we went about the work of integrating the orders into their point of sale system so that it would hit their prep line and they could prepare the order just like they would an order placed inside the restaurant.
Interesting. So it's kind of the opposite. So Noah, how did the opportunity for you guys to work with Five Guys and, eventually got a bunch of other restaurants like Shake Shack and Chili's, but how did the Five Guys opportunity come about? Did they just notice the work you were doing in the space? Did they reach out to you? And how did you get a customer like that, especially early on? It was significant for you.
Super significant. Five Guys at that moment in time was the fastest growing restaurant brand in the history of the restaurant industry. It had gone from 4 restaurant locations up to, I think, around 500 at the time that we signed them in 2009, 2010. The way that we started working with Five Guys was that they saw some of the work that we were doing in New York City, and specifically their New York City operators, their franchisees who ran the New York City market, saw the work that we were doing here. And they said, this could really help us to solve a big problem that we have. What was the problem? They were very, very popular. And so they had long lines of guests. And the food was all made to order. It was part of that better burger, fast casual revolution of, we're going to cook your burger when you place the order. We're going to add the toppings that you want. We're going to make it the way that you want it. And that meant that I think the average make time was about 7 minutes from order to burger being ready. So that led to a problem. You have 7 minutes of wait time built in, and you have the wait to even get to the front of the line to place your order in the traditional way. So what would happen is that guests would start to call into the restaurant. The phone is right where the cashier is taking the order. So now you have a cashier who is dealing with a long line of customers. Oftentimes, they're a bit frustrated because they've been waiting a long time. They have a short lunch break. And now they're answering the phone. And Five Guys had this great phrase where they said, we are giving customers the Heisman. We're picking up the phone and we're kind of saying, hey, hold off. I'm not ready to take your order after you've been waiting for so long. So they said, we want to do away with phone orders. We would love a system where a guest could order ahead, pay ahead. We could tell them, Ben, your order is going to be ready at 1:15. Show up then. Not only will you skip the wait of that line, you'll also skip waiting for the food to be prepared. At 1:15, we're going to start cooking at 1:08. 7 minutes later, your food is going to be fresh and ready. You can pick it up and you can have an even faster experience than you would at a drive-through and a highly personalized order. So it was this real business need that they wanted to solve. And the New York City operators then communicated back with HQ in Lorton, Virginia, and they said, we like these guys. We like what they're up to. Will you take a look at it? And it was a great match, this fast-growing brand that really wanted to lead the way. We were hungry to do whatever it took to do that POS integration, which we'd never done before, in their case, to 2 different point-of-sale systems that were in use. Corporate stores, franchise stores, they had 2 different systems in play. And we really grew up together. It's an incredible brand that has grown far beyond that 500 locations, now well over 1,000. And I'm proud to say that we've been partners now for 15 years, and we keep doing more and more together. And it's a great example of a cornerstone relationship, a great case study, reference story that has led to so many other enterprise brands saying, we want to do what Five Guys did. How do you help us to do that and get to market and make sure that it's solving business needs that we have?
So Noah, when they wanted an integration in their system, were you confident that you could do that at the time? And what kind of technical undertaking did it take for you to even pull that off, especially as an early company?
So I will tell you that it was not just a technical challenge. It certainly was that, because these point of sale systems, in their case, it was Radiant RPOS, now part of the NCR platform, and Micros 3700, now part of the Oracle hospitality platform. They were not built for orders to get injected from the internet into the in-restaurant point of sale system. So there was a technical challenge. But far greater, from my perspective at least, than that technical challenge was the political challenge. Meaning, these were point of sale providers that were the king of the hill in restaurant technology. And their reaction when a startup, 12-person startup, which we were at the time, was calling and saying, hey, we want to integrate with you, was, get out of here. We're going to do this for the restaurant. If they have a need, we're going to solve their needs. That's what we do. This is our customer. Anything technology, we're going to do. It was a very classic example of a walled garden, closed ecosystem approach. And that was the standard of that time. And it really took the advocacy specifically of Five Guys, who was growing so quickly that they could say to each of those point of sale players, if you don't do this and let Olo integrate to you, I'm going to do the next 100 stores with your competitor. And both of them, for fear of missing out reasons, said, okay, we'll do it based on your advocacy for Olo. And we were able to integrate into those point of sale systems. Then the technical challenge was that same concept of polling for orders. How are we going to send orders in from the outside to the point of sale without saying you need to change your firewall settings and somehow create a vulnerability in the network? So our brilliant CTO and architect had the idea that we could replicate some of the protocols that Skype had introduced to the market, where we could have basically an opportunity for the polling and the sending of orders down to the point of sale to not require any changes in the firewall setting, but in a longstanding, I'm going to forget the technical term, connection between our servers and the point of sale, we could basically do a handshake where we could inject orders without messing with the firewall. That was a stroke of genius. That is something that we then replicated with every other point of sale. Today, we have over 36 point of sale systems that we've done an integration to. And every single one of them took both technical brilliance and political jockeying to figure out tactically how are we going to find a way to get the point of sale company to say, I will allow Olo to integrate in to the platform, even though it wasn't designed for this.
So that much work went into it.
Tons of work went into it. And for a long time, that was a huge differentiator. And what I would argue was Olo's competitive advantage. We had figured out how to integrate into point of sale systems, and no other competitors had figured that out. What we have done, maybe surprisingly, is to say, yeah, it was walled gardens, closed ecosystem until we came around. What we're now going to do on behalf of our customers and on behalf of our industry and the spirit of innovation is we ourselves are going to be an open platform. And you can use Olo now and our APIs to inject orders or get data out of the point of sale platform in a way that was never possible before. And I'm really, really proud of that as part of Olo's legacy, that we've taken this closed ecosystem approach, we've opened it up, and as a result, we now have over 300 integrated technology partners. And really, it's, let 1,000 flowers bloom. So much innovation has happened because of bringing about that shift from closed to open in restaurant technology.
Definitely, it's an important shift that happened. Agreed. So, there was an opportunity that came about that you did a partnership with Google for Google Search and to help identify local restaurants and place orders through restaurants. How did that kind of partnership form initially, and how impactful was that to you guys as a business?
Yeah, it's a huge part of our ecosystem approach is realizing that we need to meet guests where they are. And where guests are could be the restaurant's website, could be the restaurant's app, but is oftentimes a third-party marketplace like an Uber Eats or a DoorDash or a Grubhub. And a lot of the time, it's the guest looking for the restaurant on what is truly the front door of the internet still, which is Google. So they're looking for the restaurant by name in Google Search. They might be typing it into their browser, and that is powered by Google. They're getting the results. So how do we optimize the results that the guest then sees to drive them to order directly from the brand and to forge that direct relationship with the brand? That was the spirit behind our partnership with Google. It was something that they were interested in doing in the restaurant vertical after doing broadly in commerce before that. And we saw a great opportunity to advocate on behalf of our customers and the industry itself to drive more direct connections between guests searching on Google, ordering with the brand. It was an important thing at the time because, much like in other industries, before we forged this partnership, when you would go as a guest and search for a brand's name, what you would typically find was the link for a third-party marketplace who could then send you into that restaurant, but where you would then be forging the relationship with the marketplace and not with the brand itself. So very much like in travel with the online travel agents, Expedia and Priceline versus the hotel brands, if you are a brand, you want to forge that direct relationship with the guest. You don't want to be basically renting transactions from third-party marketplaces. And Google really has a lot of influence on shifting the power balance between those two different sources of orders, and consequently where the guest is forging that relationship with a marketplace or directly with a brand.
So, that was just where Google was where it's at and people were searching up, so you needed to be there.
You need to be there. You need to fish where the fish are biting, and Google is a massive pond.
So in 2021, I think in March, you decided to go public. You raised $450 million in the IPO there. What was like your plan with this going public opportunity? Why did you want to go public initially, and how did you use that capital to really help the business?
Yeah, I will tell you honestly, I never aspired as a 24-year-old starting Olo back in 2005. My vision was never, we're going to take this thing public on the New York Stock Exchange. Never part of my vision for what we would be. I honestly thought this is either going to work or it's not going to work. It's going to work in 4 years and somebody will buy the company, or it's not going to work and 4 years later or something like that, I will go off to business school as I was intended to do. but I need to take this shot. What happened over the years is that Olo really gained momentum and gained share of overall transactions with our restaurants, such that we became a mission critical part of their business. And in 2020, we all as an industry and we all as a society went through COVID, when that mission critical component of Olo was just on full display. Restaurants had to close their dining rooms. The only transactions that were coming through were through the digital platform. And so it was a great reminder to restaurants that I need and depend upon Olo. I can't have anything happen to Olo that would impair their ability to be that mission critical platform. And years earlier, there had been competitors of Olo who had gotten snapped up and acquired by other parties who then basically shut down the core business or just went out of business. And every time that happened, it was a good thing. In the moment for Olo, we gained new customers who were looking for a replacement platform, but it was a scary trend for the industry, thinking, well, if Olo, like these other players, can just go away overnight, I'm going to be left with $70 million of my annual sales out the window. So for me, going public was the best way for us to commit to being a long-term going concern, a healthy financial, strong balance sheet, profitable business, and to say these things that you know us for, being an open platform, being on the restaurant side, and being independent, long-term oriented, and with a thriving partner ecosystem, that is who we're going to be for the long term. You can now think about Olo as an alternative to, I need to own and build and control my own platform, which is typically what the largest restaurant brands had done up until that point. And really the proof is in the pudding. Since our IPO, there have been a dozen brands that are truly, mega enterprise, public company or public company scale, who had built homegrown technology, who have now shifted over to Olo because they feel that confidence that we're going to be the reliable platform for the long term. I've heard that that is a rare reason to want to go public, but for me, it was the best demonstration of our commitment to doing this for many years to come and for being that platform for the industry. And I'm proud that we now get to serve 700 enterprise brands across 80,000 restaurant locations, and they have that confidence in the platform to be their reliable, stable platform for many decades to come.
So during COVID, Noah, your software, like how impactful was it to these businesses? I mean, like you mentioned before, I mean, this was the only orders coming in. Like some of these businesses wouldn't even have made it potentially without your software, right?
Yeah, it was a very scary moment for everybody. It was a particularly scary moment from a business sense for the restaurant industry, just not knowing what it meant for, was it safe to serve guests in traditional ways? Was it safe to have your crew coming into the restaurant in close quarters in the kitchen preparing food? And the industry innovated and found a way through it. And Olo was part of that. And we weren't the only ones. There were a lot of companies that really stepped up as platforms and helped the industry through. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity that we had to play that role. And it really came home to me. I was honored at an award ceremony a couple of years after COVID. And I was introduced by one of my mentors and a 10-year Olo board member, Danny Meyer, who is the founder of Shake Shack and really well known across the industry, the author of Setting the Table. And I'll never forget the moment, Danny said to the group before I stepped up and spoke that many of the people in that room, many of the businesses that they represented wouldn't be around were it not for Olo and the role that we played. And I received a standing ovation. And it was a really moving moment for me. And by extension, the full team Olo and everybody involved in Olo, that we had played that critical role for the industry to help shepherd them to the other side. I take inspiration from my namesake, the story of Noah and the Ark. And I feel like in that COVID moment, at least, we were sort of like this safe, dry environment to shepherd the industry from the flood to dry land. And that was a really powerful recognition of that moment that, gives me goosebumps even talking about.
So Noah, you've done a lot, throughout your years building this platform up. You've helped restaurants survive. You helped them thrive with orders coming in. Maybe they wouldn't have gone elsewhere. You've helped local businesses be supported through online search. Just the last question that I have, like at this point in your career and in your life in general, like what do you aspire to accomplish next that you haven't been able to accomplish yet? Like what do you see the next 5 to 10 years looking like?
So I get this question a lot, and people will come up to me and they'll say, "Hey, congratulations, you did it. You IPO'd. That must have been your dream all along. You're done." And what I tell Team Olo all the time is I am so incredibly grateful for all the things that we've done over the last 19 years. And at the same time, I am deeply unsatisfied. There is so much for us to go and do. And my message to the team is we've been climbing for a long time and we're up really high, but this is base camp. We are not at the top of the mountain, and we have a much further climb to go and do together over the years ahead. If I put that into business terms, if I think about where we are in our total addressable market, I mean, we're maybe 1%, maybe 2% of the way there. We have 4 times the number of restaurants that we could serve in our defined market than we do serve today. 80,000 restaurants we serve today. There are over 320,000 enterprise restaurants in the markets that we serve for us to go and play a role as a service provider. And there's a huge opportunity for us to do more with the restaurants that we work with. And I think that is perhaps surprisingly the much larger opportunity. There are restaurants that are doing 25 times more from an annualized recurring revenue perspective than the average. And I think that is what is an inspiration to me, that if we have a 4 times opportunity to scale into our total addressable market, and we have a 25 times opportunity to grow the revenue from each restaurant, that's a 100x opportunity. And then you're thinking, oh, we're at 1% of the journey. We are far from done. And I'm really excited. I mean, this is an industry that is a $1.2 trillion industry. And I take great inspiration from this Kara Swisher quote: everything that can be digitized will be digitized. If you think about it in those terms, this is an industry that is still very non-digital, very traditional. So if we're that platform that is positioned to be the digitizing agent of a $1.2 trillion industry, we are super early in that process and have a long and exciting future ahead of us, and a great history and legacy behind us as well.
Sounds good. Well, no, I appreciate you coming on. I'm definitely excited to see you continue to grow. You mentioned the size of the opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity, and also a lot of opportunity to help people in this space that need help with orders, need help with the right software, and need help to be able to sustain their businesses in this new digital age. So appreciate you coming on, and looking forward to seeing your continued success.
Ben, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.